that's what I think would drive most people the most crazy is if you find out who people are, you realize that it's your neighbor or your doctor or your or that person who runs a program at your church or leads a Bible study. You're like,
say there's immense
holy
irony
shit.
though. There is immense irony of the guy at church sharing his wife with another dude. You know, like I'm just saying, like it's there's a lot of irony.
Oh, sweet irony.
It's there's a lot of irony.
But
there.
they do, man. Like, and they probably do at numbers that would shock people.
Not the best churchgoer, I would imagine. Not the best believer.
Moment. So, you know, I don't care. Like, people will say what they want. You can fight the internet's opinion, or you can just let them have it.
Finally gets to the hospital. He doesn't die. Doesn't kill himself. You know what he does instead? Goes on to Kiwi Farms. Tells them what a piece of shit I am. Holy shit. I have faith in this guy. I trusted this guy. I have faith in this guy. He's such a garbage person. And things he believes aren't true at all. And yet, he asked me to save his life. You know what he never asked me? Hey, man, are these things true? Well, no. No. You save a person's life. This is quintessentially Kiwi Farms, wrapped up for all of you. Is a person whose family has disowned them, will never have a significant other, whose government has disowned them, whose employers have disowned them. They sit on some internet all day, watching some person begging them to save their life. And when they do, they're appreciative for a moment until that person stops paying attention to them. And suddenly, well, they're eating 22 LRs all day. And you go, I tried to save you by just, John, making you into a person who can interact with a fucking cashier at Walmart. Instead, you can't interact with a cashier at Walmart, not because they speak fucking Hamoub and have lived in a Kenyan refugee camp for 3 years, but rather because you haven't lived anywhere for 3 years because you can't afford it. You're not mentally sound, not mentally stable. And every day that you're alone, you try to shove a dick so far in your mouth that you choke to death on it. And then you blame me for whatever your perception is. Go get him, John.
I don't care. Like, people will say what they want. You can fight the internet's opinion, or you can just let them have it. Typically, the second one is the more efficient and useful option, because the first one, once someone on the internet makes an opinion about you, there's nothing you can really do to change it. Like, they'll have to change it on their own.
Right. So what do you say to people who are like, Nick's changed, his content's changed? Like, they formed that opinion about you. Well, what got them to that opinion? Why do people say, well, Nick Rekieta is not what he used to be?
Well, they're probably right. I don't know. What do you say to the you've changed things? Like, well, I mean, I guess it's your perspective on what it is. Do I talk about comics and anime as much? No, way less. I'm not covering any cases in those areas. So certainly that has changed. The subject matter I've covered has changed. If you found me by watching me cover live trials, when I'm covering Rittenhouse and Johnny Depp, I'm putting in between 12 and 17 hours a day, 5 days a week for weeks and weeks at a time. I can't do that most of the time. Even when I would like to, and usually if there is a trial that it has sufficient level of popularity, it would be very profitable personally for me to do that. But I just can't, man. I got 5 kids. I got a wife. We have tons of family obligations and events that we go to. I teach at our homeschool co-op. All of those things get pushed to the side when there's a trial. So for me, like, if that's what you found me doing, where I'm spending 80 hours a week streaming, well, and then you come in, you're like, why is he only doing 4 shows this week? Well, it's like, because I don't want to kill myself yet. And I don't want to start wanting to kill myself either. So maybe I've changed in that way. And then there's this other aspect where people imposed upon me a set of values because I am married. I've been married for 19 years. And that my wife and I are like that's it. We don't have prior major relationships really. We have 5 children. We homeschool them, and we're Christian. People decided then that meant we were a specific brand of Christianity.
Says, what the fuck is going on here? Good for you guys. Smiley face. I don't know what that means. Smiley
He's
face.
talking. No, Nick clearly said we were playing footsie in the hot tub, and Oz is really happy about it. He's very supportive. Oz is an
I miss
open-minded
you.
guy.
I love you. Not
Oz,
enough
my
Oz
feet have
anymore.
retracted to my buttocks. So
We actually have any. What was it? Toes now? Did you say toes?
how
What
do
did
you
you
have
say?
any toes?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Do you want to read this name right here?
It's
By
only
my
friendship
nail?
because he doesn't
Where's
like
Sid?
glue.
What did Sid
No,
have
no, no.
to say?
I'm getting to sit. Hold on. Read that name right there.
That's Long Rod Van Huge Dong.
You guys found my account.
The sock account with hashtag free the nipple. I agree, but I don't want to be banned off YouTube.
Hey, bro, it
yet.
wasn't a sock.
All right, fine. Jesus.
Right, you two are fine. Buddy East Coast says kinky shit going on here. This has to end good.
Ow, that fucking light.
It's well.
It's not the light.
It will
There's
end
a
well.
heater down there.
Oh,
God, don't touch the light.
Stop putting your balls in the heat pump, Aaron.
I'm
Stop
sorry.
going into the
They
light.
get so low when I'm in
We
here.
need you. How do we have a 4-way relationship without you?
One's in the chat for Rekieta to run the chat. Two's in
No.
the chat for April to run the chat.
Me. I will come closer to the camera if you pick me.
Wow.
Oh, what a horror.
I got
And then they will identify various opinions I've had on certain things and say they are definitely this. And then if you violate that image, you're guilty of some sort of hypocrisy, whether or not you actually possess that opinion. People decided that you did. And so then, but again, what do you do? Like, change it. And then the worst part about that is when people take a story or a concept and then they add information to it for whatever reason. They create a fiction based on a reality, and then they've determined that fiction is grounds for you having violated something else. There's a whole bunch of funny stuff about me that is just wildly untrue, and people say that is the source of the hypocrisy of me betraying some values. It's like, but guys, like it didn't actually happen.
Well, so what are some of those things that people say about you that are untrue?
Well, apparently, I am a swinger, I guess. And they don't mean with like a golf club. I guess that means that I go out and sleep around consensually outside of my marriage, which is not true at all.
How did they get that? Where did that come from?
Now, while I'm not a swinger, I have done a bunch of hilarious stuff in my life, fun things, in my opinion, that do actually kind of push the boundaries of what people are comfortable with. Like for example, when I go out to a bar or a club, I will buy drinks for numerous people. Like I'm out having fun. I'll buy a bunch of drinks for people, and I'll often just walk away, or I'll talk to them. And sometimes that involves meeting people who try to pick you up and take you home. And I don't go home with anybody other than my wife because, well, we're monogamous, like, and we always have been. But that leads people to the idea that maybe we're not, or something. Or I have talked about attending a nude beach, for example, and I think it's actually an activity that a lot of people would benefit from when you find out how unsexual it is. But because of that, people start to draw conclusions about what goes on at those places. And it's like, guys, I'm sharing a fun story with you that was so far out of my comfort zone. But then I realized that, that it's really interesting what being around a bunch of other naked people is when it's all consensual, because you realize that like maybe your body dysmorphia issues or your insecurities about yourself can vanish in the wake of everyone's averageness. But yeah, so back to where were we going next?
We were talking about things people say about you online that are not true. And for the record, when you say you go out to clubs with your family, these are not swingers clubs, right? Just need to be very clear.
Yeah, just like a dance club in a city or a bar. Like they're just places where people go. That's it. So
That may or may not have swingers at them.
well,
Who
I mean,
knows?
I got to tell you, the funny thing about rumors about that sort of life is you start to meet people who are in that live, like they reach out to you or they'll come out to you or whatever, not in a gross way, right? Not in
Okay.
like a hey not that way, but like they're just like, hey, like, are you involved in this? Like, because I can tell you about it. And you know how it goes, like when you talk about video games, surprising people reach out to you to talk to you about video games, and you're like, why are, like, how did you even know I exist, right? Like you were a developer, you're whatever. In the same way that works in every other thing. And as you meet these people, you will be shocked to find out where they are. You're worried about a swingers club. I mean, you are just as likely to encounter swingers in your churches, your grocery stores, everywhere else. They're pretty discreet people, and we'll talk about them as if they're like animals in a, in a documentary. They're pretty discreet people, but I mean, they are. It is a place where they go away from real life to engage in this activity that other people judge them pretty heavily for, but they're everywhere. It's not like there's a checkbox where you're like, I know that this place will have them and this place won't. No, the places you expect that they're not are probably where they're most present. And it's funny to me to see that after, like, I had never met anybody who was a swinger until like the rumors and shit started. And then I start finding out people who are, and I'm like, wow, that's a surprise. But okay, I guess that explains your wall art. No, that's a joke. But it's like you find it and you're like, well, you seem kind of normal. Like you expect them to be weirdos, but they're normal, which is the whole thing about it. That's what I think would drive most people the most crazy, is if you find out who people are, and you realize that it's your neighbor or your doctor or your or that person who runs a program at your church or leads a Bible study. You're like,
Say there's immense
holy
irony
shit.
though. There is immense irony of the guy at church sharing his wife with another dude. You know, like I'm just saying, like it's there's a lot of irony.
But
there.
they do, man. Like, and they probably do at numbers that would shock people.
Not the best churchgoer, I would imagine. Not the best believer.
Well, but who is, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. We're all shitheads.
It's an interesting topic, not on the swinger thing, but just the churches and churchgoers' ability to categorize sin as if there's a hierarchy of it and that their sin is somehow less bad than someone else's. And it's like, well, that's not really in there. Like, that's not really in the Bible. Like, your desire to eat 37 pies a day is no different than someone's sexual deviancy in the eyes of sin. Like, sin is sin. The wages of it is all
gluttony.
death.
All gluttony. Yeah.
So it's funny that that's how it goes, but it is how it goes. I mean, don't get me wrong. But it's funny that is the thing that's bothered me long before, like the swinging issue, as you start to examine like the church approach to gay marriage, for example, and you ask for examples of why one group of people living in sin is particularly worse than another group of people who openly live in sin, like divorcees. If you divorce someone and then marry someone else, you're an adulterer. Like that's the reality. I hate to break that to you. That's why Catholics have annulment, because they wanted to get around that whole divorce debacle. It's like, well, if it's bad enough, we'll just say it never happened, and then you're not an adulterer now. But if you just divorced your first wife and married another wife, you're now, well, you've since it's kind of patriarchal, you made her into an adulterer or an adulteress. So now she's a sinner forever. And it's wild though. Like, that is perfectly acceptable in the Christian faith, to divorce and then to remarry, which is sin. Make no mistake, it's clearly laid out as sin. Christ himself calls it sin. And yet, this other person living in sin is categorically worse and worthy of derision and exile from church communities. And it's like, how do you come to that conclusion?
Well, I think the sooner everybody can come to the conclusion that we're all a little messed up and we all have our faults, like the sooner everybody can get over themselves, right?
You'd hope.
You'd hope so. That's just wishful thinking, and it'll never happen. All right, let's. I don't know who Pepsi Man is. I don't even know what this means.
Oh, I'm being sued for defamation by an internet weirdo who I relied on their 10-year reputation of being called a pedophile to call them a pedophile, and then they sued me for it. So that's a fun thing that I'm stuck in. And they're, Pepsi Man is he's a super fan of the show. So
okay, good.
Yeah, he's one of my biggest hug givers. So it's always nice to see from him.
So what is like you're getting sued right now? What does that look like? Is this a?
Give me 1 second. 1 second.
Sure.
Allahu Akbar.
Okay. Guys, I appreciate you guys popping in.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I do, apparently I have to go pretty quickly.
Yeah, get out of here. We'll see. Hey, thanks for your time. Appreciate you very much. Have a great day. I look forward to doing this again in the future. I'll hit you up on. Nick has gone through some really tough things over the last I'm guessing, right? Just by the look of the situation, he's gone through some really self-induced issues to the point to where there was the viral clip being passed around of him, just in a horrible mess of a situation a couple days ago on a stream, and he was arrested yesterday on stream, not on stream. He was arrested yesterday, and his information was out there booked. And this morning, actually during his show, they had his arraignment and what he was charged with. And without going too far into it, it was drugs. It was actually a lot of drugs, and the drug possession could face up to 26 years in jail. But not so, like I said, this isn't necessarily about Nick, right? What I really want to focus on is the idea of what everybody saw with Nick 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and the person that he is now, because there's definitely been a slide along the way. And I know that there's people in our community that are struggling. I said it'd be very naive of us to think that there's not people in our community who aren't dealing with, alcohol issues, drug issues, things like that. And I hope that in addition to this being a major wake-up call for Nick, it's a wake-up call for you as well. Because you matter and you're important. And like I said, I don't want to do this like this rah-rah thing, but like I said, everybody sees us on screen and that's what people see. And on the surface, Nick seemed like he had it all together until he didn't, because there's always something going on behind the scenes when it comes to this stuff. There's always, whether it's, relationship stuff, children's stuff, real life stuff that's happening. That's when we're not live. And when Nick was not live, and that apparently led to very bad decisions. And obviously, we want nothing but the best for Nick, and with anybody who's struggling. And it's tough. And before we went live, Blabs, we were talking kind of about people talk about like the downfall of Nick, and at one point he during some of these some of his live streams, he'd have 100,000 people watching him. That's
Johnny Depp stuff.
Johnny Depp, the Amber Heard, the Kyle Rittenhouse case. He was in the law tuber space. He was the authority of that space. And I don't know what his last live stream, I don't know what his viewership looked like. His last live stream a couple days ago. But a lot of people will say that, I think on the surface, they go, well, this is a dude who had 100,000 people watching him at one time. And now he has, let's just say, 2,000 people, 5,000 people, 1,000 people, whatever. And they'll say, look, what a failure. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, if you have one person watching you, that's a miracle, right? Right now we have, just between X and YouTube, we have almost 3,300 people watching. We have another 350 watching over on Rumble. We have close to 4,000 people watching this right now. That is a freaking miracle, right? Mm-hmm. That each of you guys showed up on a day-to-day basis. So people who are talking about how much he's fallen off from a YouTube perspective, I mean, he rode the wave. He had success, and I can absolutely see how in his own mind, when he's streaming to 100,000 people and he's streaming to a small percentage of that, how in his own mind he can see, oh well, I failed or whatever. But that's not the case. The content wasn't there to support his content. So, but Gabe, we were talking about this before. I don't know. You wanted to kind of touch on this as well, right?
Yeah. I do think it's very sad. I don't know Nick. I mean, I know of him. Everyone who does YouTube knows of him. And I think it just reminds you that famous quote, there before the grace of God go I. We all have our problems. We all have our things that we've done. I've never been into drugs or alcohol, and I'm not saying I'm better. I struggled with food. I'm 265 pounds. I was 305 last summer. So I get addiction and dealing with things in funny ways. And, food, you can abuse food, right? So it's very sad to see. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm actually a grandfather. I have a granddaughter that's 1.5 years old. And I heard he has children. So that just makes it even more tragic. And I really hope he has good friends, not internet fake friends or whatever. And I hope he has good friends and family around him and his wife and the people, because the little I've heard, and it's like a game of telephone. You hear stuff, you don't know what's true. It sounds terrible, like the legal ramifications that could be possible. Sounds like a nightmare. And I just feel really sorry, because we've all done dumbass things. Like I said, there before the grace of God go I. It could have been any of us in any of this stuff. So it's heartbreaking. And one of the worst parts I've seen is like friends of his or whatever dogpiling, making fun and using it to monetize. And that, man, the internet, sometimes I feel like social media, the fans, you guys, making friends like you, Blabs, Dan, like meeting awesome people online is amazing. And then you see the ugly side of social media and you're like, I don't ever want to go on this shit again. That's how I feel about it sometimes when I see the bullying and the doxing, and it's a tragedy. I feel sorry. I'll pray for the guy, because wow, that's just awful.
Some people are like, Nick was a snake, Nick was this, Nick was that, right? But like, if you see a wounded animal, are you just gonna sit there and laugh at it, right? Like,
no.
You want to help it. You don't know what that animal's done, and maybe that animal, like I'm just, a broader analogy, right? Like this guy is clearly hurt. You've seen the slide, right? And whether he's done shitty things or not, or whether he is a piece of crap or not, he's clearly struggling, right? And people will say that I've been called, I've been too nice, right? With some of these people, you're giving them too much grace. I don't know. I just want what's best for people, right? And when you see somebody who has clearly lost that much weight, who's clearly struggling with substance abuse, that is tough. And I want them to be successful. I want them to be successful in getting that out of their life, getting their life in order, and more importantly, for their kids. He doesn't. I've seen people say he doesn't deserve a chance. Right? Look in our space. Look in our space. We have somebody in our space that is a recovering addict that millions of people look up to, millions of people watch, that has turned around his life and has become an example of how to live their life. And I'm speaking of Gary, right?
Yes.
If Gary was written off because when he was at his lowest, Gary wouldn't listen. The reality is Gary wouldn't be here. FNT wouldn't be here. Jeremy probably wouldn't see the success he has. We wouldn't be here. Like the trickle down effect from just giving him a chance to succeed and him getting back up on his feet. Like that's the trickle down effect. The butterfly effect is massive. So, people can dance on his grave all you want, but he does deserve a chance for redemption. And people fall down all the time. I said this to my kids ever since they were kids. What do you do when you fall down? You get back up, right? And sometimes it's just harder to get back up. And Nick, I know you're not going to watch this, but if you do, we hope you get back up, and we hope you can stand back up and get things figured out.
3 weeks later.
There, and with that said, let's go back a couple weeks ago. On May 24th, as this came out on the internet, a former guest we had on the show, Nick Rekieta, was arrested for drug and firearms possession. And I've said this before. I said this on X. Like, I don't know Nick personally. I don't know him at all. Outside of having him on the show, it was very cordial. Seemed like a nice guy, but perceptions may not necessarily match up with reality in this situation. So he gets arrested. He comes out, gets taken out on jail, or taken out on bond. And like I said, I don't know him. I don't know him personally, but this doesn't sound or look good, because since he's been released on bond, he's been live on X, or live on YouTube several times talking about the situation. Now, I have not watched any of this stuff at all. This is not my business until it's something that I'm really, really passionate about. And I feel like the reason why we need to talk about this in this situation is we've talked about Nick Merckx many times and why he got called out with Call of Duty and why he got canceled, his Protect All Kids thing. And this very much for me, as a father of 2 girls, lines up in this camp, especially as the father of someone who was the age who was affected in the situation, allegedly. And I want to make sure that we talk about all this allegedly. It came out yesterday that there was a leaked court documents that were apparently not supposed to be made public, but were made public. That one of the things that happened, and one of the reasons why he was arrested, was that, and this is just beyond hard to say, say the alleged court document states that YouTuber Nick Rekieta's 9-year-old daughter tested positive for cocaine. Once again, this is all allegedly. Nick is facing second-degree possession, child endangerment, and gross misdemeanor firearms charge. It says the child tested positive for cocaine at a level of over 5,000 with a cutoff of 500. I don't know what that means, but I know that the fact that if this is around a 9-year-old and you are exposing them to this, you're a piece of shit. And I say that in the most endearing way possible. You're a piece of shit, allegedly. He went live last night and he talked about this. There's about a 3-minute clip of him talking about it. And he didn't deny the authenticity of the claims or the documents, which is just crazy. That this is a situation, and we're talking about somebody who was one of the top YouTubers in the world not too long ago. One of the most successful from a monetary standpoint, from his audience perspective, and a guy whose public-facing image was one thing, and allegedly behind the scenes is totally different. People talk about wearing masks, and that's what it looks like the situation was. A mask publicly and the real self, removing the mask behind the scenes, where we're dealing with allegedly, multiple partners with, away from your wife, drugs, alcohol, all that stuff, and exposing your children to these things. That drives me crazy. It drives me crazy in this situation. And I think that I don't know what this guy's doing, as far as trying to go and say these things publicly or live streaming about this situation. It doesn't make any sense to me. I think he should just shut up and go through the process. And I don't know if this is true. I don't know how anybody could potentially, quote unquote, be on this guy's side. If you are one of the people that say, protect all kids, protect our kids, and you're exposing 9-year-olds to hardcore drugs, I got no place for you, man. I really don't. That's not normal men. That's not normal men behavior. And that sucks. Blabs, do you have anything on this? Do you have anything you want to chime in on this at all?
Not a whole lot. I agree with you. Once you have innocent kids involved, to the wood chipper. That's my thought.
I don't disagree. I think it's really disheartening to see somebody like this who literally had everything right there, family, fortune, like literally fortune, from YouTube, who let it all spiral out of control, man. And like I said, this is all allegedly. I want to be very clear about that. But if it happened allegedly, happened, he's allegedly a giant piece of shit. And I just got to say that because I don't know how anybody can, like, I know Cam's friends with him and stuff. Cam said, he needs help. Rekieta needs help. I mean, and if this is true, I mean, we'll certainly keep that episode up. I'm not for like scrubbing history or anything like that, but I don't want anything to do with that guy ever again. Even through like, and when this whole thing broke out, I mean, I reached out to him privately. I DM'd him saying like, hey man, I hope, if you need help, say the word. Man, I'm pulling that back. I got no interest if this allegedly happened. And this is just, as Time Patrol came and says the facts will come out when it's tested in court in August. Yeah, right. And I guess we'll see. So, and as Demio says, maybe this is pro Jared all over again. Maybe it is. But I think the difference between what happened with Jared and what happened here is that there were no court documents with Jared that I know of. There was all allegations. And, when you deal with like legal court documents, that's one thing. So that's kind of where it's at. And obviously I'm really passionate about this. It drives me crazy. And that's kind of where we're at with this. I don't really have a whole lot to say outside of that, but it's upsetting to see. And if it's true, go fuck yourself.
Welcome to the party, pal.
What the fuck you bet?